We continue with the Stephen Avery jury trial, Voir, Day 4, February 8th, 2007. The court. We'll move on to the next juror, which I believe is, Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray, please raise your right hand and the clerk will administer the oath to you. Juror sworn. Clerk, please be seated. Voir dire examination by Attorney Fallon. Good morning, sir. Morning. My name is Tom Fallon. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Wisconsin Department of Justice. I'm prosecutor in this case. To my immediate left is Mr. Ken Kratz, the Calumet County District Attorney and Special Prosecutor. Good morning, and thanks for returning, helping us out. The attorneys have a few questions for you to follow up on some of the information you provided last week in your questionnaire, and we appreciate your help. I see, Mr. Gray, that you're currently retired from GTE. That's correct. Okay, and you were there 35 years? That's correct. What position or what did you do for GTE? A number of positions, primarily in the central office equipment, large systems. I installed, maintained, modified, changed. Okay, all right. During your time there, did you have any supervisory responsibilities? Yes. Or run any departments or anything? Yes. Tell us about that. I was first level supervisor at Slinger, in the Slinger area for a while, and then transferred back up to Two Rivers from Slinger. Okay, and how many people did you supervise or oversee? I believe 11. Okay, and how long did you do the supervisory, or how long were you a supervisor? Couple years. Uh-huh. Did you enjoy it? Yes. You did? Okay. I also see that you served in the Air Force? Yes. And what did you do in the Air Force? Communications. And what did that involve? What type of communication work were you involved in? Communications at radar sites. Okay. That would be tying a radar units together for communications to talk to each other and that sort of thing. Connecting a system, in other words, so that everybody could talk? Yes. I see. And you did that for 4 years, did I see? I served 4 years, yes. 4 years, all right. And what rank did you achieve before retiring from that? E4. And what is that? Well, that would be Airman First. Airman First, okay. Did you enjoy your time in the Air Force? Yes. Yeah? Yeah, it was good. Well, you seem to hesitate a little. I just thought I'd ask. Sometimes. Good and bad. Yeah, I would imagine. All right. Okay, I see that you do... You like to travel in your spare time? What kind of traveling do you like to do? Is that around here, this country, or do you travel overseas much? Or, no, not overseas. My family lives in Texas. We go there a lot. Okay. And we visit national parks and that sort of thing. I see. Okay. All right. Well, one of the things of concern to all of us here that we'd like to talk to you about is the news coverage which has attended this trial or the prospect of this trial, and ask you some questions about that. And it appears that you obtain your news from a variety of sources: radio, newspaper, television, and magazines. Now, let me ask first, where would you say you get the vast majority of your news? Or is it evenly split? The vast majority would be newspaper. From the newspaper. Yeah. All right. Various newspapers. Okay, what papers do you read? The Milwaukee Sentinel, the Green Bay Press, and the Manitowoc Herald Times. All right, and do you read them daily or regularly? Pretty much, not all three, but I read the paper almost every day. Okay, so you're reading at least one of those papers every day? Yes. Okay, and how about television news? Very little. Very little? All right. And magazines? What kind of magazines do you regularly read? National Geographic, that sort of thing. All right. Any news magazines like U.S. World Report or Forbes or anything like that? Many years ago, but not anymore. Okay. All right. Okay. I see from your questionnaire that once you received your notification from the court, you made a conscious effort to avoid any news about the case. Is that correct? That's very true. All right. And as you sit here today, you can tell us that in the last 3 weeks, you've managed to pretty much avoid the news coverage? It's impossible to avoid all that. Sure. But yes. Okay. Yeah. You haven't read any detailed articles or no? Anything? All right. No, I had my wife censor the paper for me. All right. And did you see anything on television or hear anything on the radio? No, on television, not at all. Okay. The radio, just short blurbs. Sure. And I see your questionnaire. You indicate you haven't formed any opinions at all, one way or another, about this particular case? Nope. So as you sit here today, you don't have any opinion at all as to whether Mr. Avery is guilty or innocent of what he's been charged with? Nope, that's what the trial's for. Okay, so you have no problem at this time presuming him innocent until or unless he's proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? No. Okay, and you think you can follow that and accept that principle as this trial would begin if you were selected as a juror? Yes, I believe so. Okay, all right. I just have one last question. You indicate that you did have some concern about possibly serving as a juror. I understand your mother is ill down in San Antonio? That's correct. All right. What? How's she doing lately? I talked to my sister Tuesday, and she's a little better. Her attitude and will to survive is much improved. She's on the uptake, more or less, at least for the time being? Yes. Okay. Is she at home or in the hospital? She's hospital, therapy, and nursing home for the last 4 or 5 months. Okay, but she seems to be relatively stable at the current time? Yes. Okay. She had an operation on her hip, and it, sure, got infected and that sort of thing. And the last time I talked to my sister, then she said the wound was, quote, healing, finally. All right, so things seem to be getting better. Better, yes. Okay, all right, thanks. That's all I have. Attorney Fallon, I'll pass the juror. The court, Mr. Strang. Attorney Strang, thank you, Your Honor. Voir dire examination by Attorney Strang. Good morning. Morning. Dean Strang, Jerome Buting, Stephen Avery. Mr. Buting and I are defending Mr. Avery. And I thought I would start by going back just a little bit with you. You mentioned that you had been parish president, or maybe you still are parish president. Yeah, that was 70s and 80s. Okay, a long time ago. And how long did you do that? You said 2 terms, but I don't know how long the terms were. Each was a year. Each was 1 year? Uh-huh. Okay. And then sat on the parish school board as well for several years. Again, in the 70s and 80s. Yes. When your boys were growing up, that's correct. Are you still active in the parish? Not as much as I used to be, but yeah, I still do some volunteer work. And as we come a little bit closer in time, now I'm just sort of curious how much you and your wife followed the disappearance of Teresa Halbach and then the discoveries, on what people have been calling the Avery property. Yes. And then the arrest of Stephen Avery. Yes. Did you follow that pretty closely initially? In the early days, yes. Okay. And what do you mean by the early days, Mr. Gray? In the first month, 2 months, that time period through there, yeah. Okay. And followed it pretty closely. How? With the news, the paper, that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say I followed it closely. I knew it was going on, but I had other things too. Sure, okay. And even back then, I guess where I'm going is, were you picking up most of what you did through the newspaper? Yes. As opposed to watching TV in the middle of the day or something? Yes, I never watched television in the day. Okay. Do you remember a young man named Brendan Dassey? The name? Yes. Uh-huh. And what do you know about young Brendan Dassey? Personally, nothing. Well, I mean, no from the paper or, that he's implicated. Okay. And any understanding of how or why he's implicated or? Yes, that came out very early. Tell me a little bit about that. What you've learned from the paper or TV or whenever. That he was accused, arrested, questioned, that sort of thing, and that he gave some sort of confession. Uh-huh. Did you hear that he later took that confession back or recanted? Yes, I did. Do you remember how you heard about the confession and then the recantation? Probably in the paper. What do you suppose all of that has to do with Stephen Avery? I'm not sure. How about your wife? Have you and your wife discussed the case back in the early days? No. Back then, yeah, we did to some extent. Yes, uh-huh. Does she have any opinion about whether Mr. Avery did it or didn't do it, or? She said she definitely wouldn't want to be on the jury. Okay, what did that mean? That she couldn't get the details out of her mind. Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Just that all of the allegations and, yes, the ugliness of it, yes. Oh, how about you? I mean, these are ugly allegations. How's that affected you? I can erase things in my mind so that they, they're not important. I pay no attention to them. And I guess, are these important? Is it important when a young woman goes missing and then apparently... I'm not talking about that, about the act. I'm talking about since I was in the jury pool. Okay, but I am talking about the... Is there a picture still in my mind? Yes. 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 What's the picture? That a young woman shouldn't be violated. Violated meaning raped or killed or any. Her body mutilated or any of the above. Any of that? Okay. And do you react to that in specific as a young woman shouldn't be or that shouldn't happen to anyone? To a human being. a human being? Do you have grandkids? Yes. And is there a level at which you're reacting to this as a grandfather with grandkids who may be about that age or in their 20s? No. Okay. What do you know about Mr. Avery's background before that? Specifically, unintelligible or conviction. I remember the first time Mr. Avery was convicted, but had long since not thought anything at all about it. You actually remember the first trial involving Mr. Avery? I remembered the first incidents and conviction. Okay. As far as the trial details, no. Right, but the conviction, and then that it occurred. Do you remember what eventually happened with that conviction? Yes, I do. Many years later? Yes, I do. What? It was thrown out. And do you know why? Yes, because of DNA. Okay. And what was your reaction to that when that conviction gets thrown out because of the DNA? Honestly, I thought the sheriff's department bungled the job. And that the state crime lab got it right with the DNA. Was Gregory Allen was the guy who committed the rape and the assault, not Steve Avery. That's my understanding, yes. And did you hear then? Did you then hear about the lawsuit? Yes. What was your reaction to that? I thought he had a right to it. Now, all of us, obviously, bring the little bits and pieces of what we know and think with us. And when you assemble all of that together and then make, whatever efforts, you can to take on the role of a juror, yes. Are you quite comfortable that if you served here, you could view Mr. Avery as starting with a clean slate altogether? Yes. Why? Because I feel that everybody has a right to a fair hearing. Mustn't he have done something here if he's in the courtroom sitting in that chair? My position is accused doesn't mean guilty. Not even maybe guilty or probably guilty? No, maybe, but not until after the trial. Okay, and who would you expect to prove him guilty or innocent here? Mr. Kratz? Or the people at this table at least? No verbal response. Okay, beyond a reasonable doubt, could you hold them to that standard? Yes. If the judge instructed that was the standard? Correct. Do you expect Mr. Buting and I to prove him innocent? No, just to refute their evidence. Right, and I expect we probably will attack or try to show another side to some of their evidence. Some of their evidence we probably won't have any dispute with. But whatever we do, can you bear in mind and honor the rule that we don't have to do anything? We don't have to prove a blessed thing to you? Yeah. That is, Mr. Avery or any, his lawyers acting for him, yeah, do not have to prove his innocence? Yes. Is that something you can accept? Yes. So the burden of proof lies with the state? Yes. And its lawyers, to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Yes. Now, as I've said, we're not going to sit here like bumps on a log. That's just not what we do. And if we cross-examine some witnesses, you would listen to that evidence just as you would to the direct testimony? Yes. Or the direct examination of those witnesses? Yes. One of the decisions we would have to make at some point would be whether to call witnesses of our own in what's called the defense case. Whether to put on a defense case at all. Yeah. If we put on a defense case, Will you give our witnesses, Mr. Avery's witnesses, the same fair consideration you would give the state's witnesses? Yeah, yes. The toughest call in that respect is whether to call Mr. Avery as a witness or not. If he's innocent, would you expect him to testify? Not if he doesn't want to. Why not? Because that's his right. I understand, and that's, as a matter of the American Constitution and our core values here, that's the correct answer everyone would say. But it's tougher to follow that sometimes in real life. Why do you think you could follow the judge's instruction that Mr. Avery has a right not to testify, and you can't consider that as any evidence at all? That's what I believe. That is what you believe? What I believe? That's it. That's why you spent your time in the Air Force? Well, no. It's just what I believe. Yeah, okay. How about if he does testify? If he were to testify, I would think it might be natural for a juror to say, well, of course he denies doing it. He's not going to get up and admit it. He's trying to save himself. Would you come at it with that attitude? I don't know if you'd call it an attitude, but it's true. He doesn't want to, he doesn't plead guilty. He doesn't want to be guilty, so yeah. Right. But, neither. I wouldn't take it either way. Okay, and really, in the end, I think that the law that the court probably would give you is if he testified. He would be considered like any other witness, I suppose. You would weigh his testimony, listen carefully, and decide whether you believe it or not believe it? Yeah, just like you would anybody else? Yes. Testifying? Yes. Could you do that? Yeah. There are other witnesses who present similar problems for some people in evaluating, but this is sort of the flip side from at least for many people. Law enforcement officers will testify here. Some of them will be in uniform. When you hear a law enforcement officer testify, are you willing and able to look at him or her as just another human being and just another witness? Yeah, I think so, He's sworn an oath. Who's like any witness who's taken an oath? To tell the truth. But what I'm getting at is, do you think there's anything about going into the profession of law enforcement that makes you more likely or less likely than someone in any other calling in life to tell the truth under oath? No, I don't think so. You would be able to listen to a law enforcement officer's testimony and weigh it, just as you would Mr. Avery's or, any other citizen or witness who might be called. Yeah, I think so. You sound just a little bit tentative about that. Maybe you could talk. No, a witness is a witness. They're sworn. They're not supposed to lie, right? So I would accept what they say. But and that's what we all want to do. The messy reality of life in trials is that sometimes, in fact, not infrequently, one witness is saying black and the other witness is saying white. On some point that matters. So they both can't be correct. Yeah. And the issue is whether you come into this with some bias for or against. No, a witness just because of the clothes they're wearing or the job they have. No. In the end, you may have to sort out conflicting testimony. Correct? And can you consider all witnesses evenly and equally from the starting point in doing that? Yeah. Did your telephone installation, or, I guess it was larger systems you were working with, did the installation and maintenance of those systems require of you better than average grasp of electrical engineering, or, yes, at least of electronics? Yes. Did you acquire that in the Air Force, or at least get training in that? Started the air, but continued going to school afterward, but through the company and that sort of thing. Okay, did that strike a chord with you in terms of an interest in science at all, or very much? Yeah, yeah. In electronics, In electronics, and yes, specific. Okay. Do you? And I'm curious what you bring of that interest or that bent to the courtroom in looking at or expecting scientific evidence. Easy. It's logic. Math, electronics is pure logic. Okay. And would you extend that to other physical sciences, like biological science? Yeah, somewhat. No. Electronics is math, and math is straight. Yeah, it's pure logic. No, biological, you mean human, animal? Yeah, no. There are too many variations there. Variations in terms of how the specimens are collected or preserved or tested. Oh, specimens. Oh, no, that I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, but again, what I'm interested in is if somebody comes in and they've got, let's say, expertise in ballistics. Do you understand what I mean by, yes, ballistics? Looking under a microscope at bullets or fragments of bullets or cartridge casings? Sometimes the boring of short or long barrels on firearms. So they come in with the specialized expertise, right? Are you likely to give them much more credit simply because of that expertise? Yes? Tell me a little bit about why. As an expert, they know what they're doing. It's a science. It's what they do. So yeah, I respect that. Okay. And are you willing and able to probe on whether they've done a good science in a particular case? If the subject comes up, sure, okay. So even if the principles are sound, you'd be willing to look at, well, was the human part of the process also sound? The human part of the evidence gathering, is that what you're saying? Evidence gathering, evidence maintaining, evidence testing, that kind of thing. I would want to make sure that there was an unbroken train. Look at the whole series of events, that lead to the scientific testimony. Yeah, okay. While we're on that, in more recent weeks, let's say in the last 8 weeks, roughly, 7-8 weeks, have you heard anything about a blood vial that I heard referred to in this case? I've heard about a blood vial, but I don't know what they're talking about. What the status is, or what role, if any, it plays? That's right. How did you hear about that then? Before I could get out of the room when the television was on. Okay, all right. No. I hope that didn't sound accusatory. No, do you remember about when? Was it before or after Christmas? I think it was after Christmas. Okay, did that cause you to form any opinion at all about the case? I wondered what they were talking about, but that's all. So, more wondering than having an opinion? Beg your pardon? More wondering than actually having an opinion? Yeah. Um, last area. Do you want to serve on the jury in this case? Want to? No. Will? Yes. Okay. Will. Because it's a civic duty? Yeah. And why not want to? I would just as soon not. I would prefer not to. I can't tell you why. I just would prefer not to. Okay, and I'm going to explore that just a little bit. And if it gets uncomfortable, tell me. All right? The court. I'm sorry, Mr. Strang, time's up. Juror Gray. Beg your pardon? The court. At this time, we'll have the clerk escort you from the courtroom, wherein juror is escorted out. The court. Is there a motion from either party? Attorney Fallon. There's no motion from the state? Thank you. Attorney Strang. No motion. The court. All right. Mr. Gray is accepted. I think before we take our break, I know the next juror, I'm not sure the reason why, but the next juror on the list was scheduled to come in this afternoon. Perhaps we can take Mr. Wardman, who might be a shorter questioning than the rest of them. And I know he waited yesterday, so I'd like to get him in today. Attorney Strang. I will object, Your Honor, to the truncation of my voir dire of the preceding witness. Although I did not have a motion for cause, I had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes left of important voir dire of that juror about his reservations, if any, about undertaking the responsibility of deliberations. The court. All right, your objections noted. Mr. Wardman, please raise your right hand and the clerk will administer the oath. Juror sworn. The clerk. Please be seated. Voir dire examination by Attorney Fallon. Good morning, Mr. Wardman. Morning. My name is Tom Fallon. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Wisconsin Department of Justice, and I'm one of the prosecutors in this case. To my immediate left is Mr. Ken Kratz, the Calumet County District Attorney and lead special prosecutor in this matter. Thanks for coming in this morning. We had a few questions we wanted to follow up with based on the information you provided last week. Sorry we didn't get to you yesterday. I know you were here. I have a couple of preliminary questions. Then I just wanted to talk about one area of concern to all of us here. My first question is, if you can help me out, because I'm not aware of the area, I'm not from the area. You indicated you're not currently employed, and your principal occupation used the designation ECK? Yeah, Eck Foundry. Oh, Eck Foundry. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. What kind of work did you do at the foundry? I was a lead man and worked on the bench in the clean air room. Lead man? Lead man. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about, I'm not quite familiar with that. What does that person do? It was my job to see that the castings were cleaned right and shipped out. Okay, did that involve any supervisory responsibilities? Yes, some. Okay, tell us about that. I had to watch the guys and train them and everything. I see. So they knew what they were doing. Okay, and how long were you supervisor of sorts? Believe it was 21 years. 21 years, okay. And how long did you work at the factory? 28. 28. So 21 out of the 28 years, you were in some responsibility as a supervisor for others? Yes. Okay. Okay. You indicated in terms of volunteer work, 2 things of interest to us. Union 301, that's associated with the foundry's work? Yes. That you did? Yes. Okay. And what specific, oh, I don't do dealing with the union no more. Okay. I didn't know if you meant now or, well, if ever. Well, thanks for clearing that. I was going to get to that, but you're no longer in the union? No. Okay, no. Okay. So you don't even do any volunteer work or currently? I do volunteer work, but not for the union. Not for the union? Okay, very good. How long were you in the union? 28 years. All right. So even though you had some supervisory responsibilities, you were still a member of the union at the foundry? Yes. I see. Okay. Did you have any special responsibilities as a member of the union, like maybe being a steward or anything? Yes. Like that? I was a steward. You were, okay. And how long were you a union steward? 3 years. Okay. Was that toward the end of your time before retirement, or was that earlier on in your career? Earlier on. Okay. Did you enjoy that union work? Yes. You did, okay. Were you involved in representing any of your colleagues in any labor disputes or management labor issues of any kind? One. Just one? All right. And how was that process? He got some disciplinary action. Okay. Do you think it was overall on balance appropriately handled? Yes, it was appropriately handled. Okay. In your work at the foundry, were you responsible for drawing up any security guidelines or safety guidelines for work at the foundry of the people you were supervising? Well, we had some insurance guys there that one time, and we did, yeah, a little bit, but it wasn't a big part of what you were doing? No. Okay. In terms of problem solving and dealing with or formulating opinions or speaking with people, trying to understand a point of view, would you consider yourself a big picture person or more of a detail-oriented guy? Detail, I think. Okay. Okay. Tell me about the volunteer work you do at the Sheriff's Department. We go on out on patrol and we check houses and that. If people have went on vacation and abandoned cars, and just keep our eyes open. And how often do you do that? Once a week. Now, you're not a licensed law enforcement officer? No. Correct? All right. And you're not carrying a weapon when you're assisting? No. Okay. But you do ride in a squad car with other deputies? No. Oh, you don't? Okay. Well, tell us how you work then. It's both. Both of us are volunteers, and we get 4-hour shifts. Oh, so there's just you and one other guy who help out? Correct. There's always two. Okay. How do you get your assignments? Or how do you know what to do? We have a, I forget now how they say it, but it's a book, and it tells us where to go. Okay, and these are people who may be out of town and have apparently asked the Sheriff's Department to keep an eye on things to make sure that no one breaks in? Correct. I see, okay. Do you use a county vehicle, or do you use your own car? County. Okay. How long have you been doing that, sir? Since November last year. Okay. And when did you retire, by the way, from the foundry? 99. I crushed 3 vertebrae in my back. I'm on disability. Okay. I'll come back to the volunteer work in a minute, but I just want to make sure, because of your disability and your back injury, would serving on a jury and, it might require sitting for an hour and a half or 2 hours at a time before you get a break. Would that cause any problems for you and as being a juror, or do you think, no, if I get too much pain or something, I just take a pill? Okay, and does that affect your ability to think and remember things if you have to take any pain medication? No. Okay, so it's pretty well under control then? Yes. Okay, all right. In terms of the volunteer work then for the Sheriff's Department, during, I take it you're still doing that today? Yes. And once a week for 4 hours? Yes. Okay. While engaging in that work, have you had an opportunity to meet or become familiar with various members of the Sheriff's Department? Not right now, no. Okay. Because I just started. Oh, just started, so, well, since November. Was that November 06 or November 6? Oh, and this is just for the last 3 months? Yes, I see. Okay, all right. I believe you said in your questionnaire you do have one son that is a member of the Sheriff's Department? Yes, I do. Okay. Now, how long has he been a member of the Sheriff's Department? Oh, 5 years, I think. All right. And do you ever have occasion to talk shop with your son about law enforcement work in general? Not much, no. He won't tell me much. All right. Very good. Well, let me ask, because this is a matter of interest to all of us here, if you were selected as a juror in this case, and since your son is a member of the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, and since there will be a pretty fair number of police officers and sheriff's deputies and state patrol officers and other law enforcement people testifying, do you think you could evaluate their testimony the same as you would any other witness? Yes, I believe I could. Okay, in other words, you don't think you'd be, more favorably disposed to believing them than you would over any other witness? No. Okay, and you realize they're human just like anybody else? They can make a mistake, and they might even lie as much as the next guy? Yes. All right, so as a juror, your job is to listen and evaluate their testimony the same as you would any other witness? Yes. All right, and you think you could do that? Yes. You feel pretty confident about that? Yes, I do. Okay. Just one last couple of questions. Have you ever had any other law enforcement experience other than just the past 3 months of helping out? No. All right. Any law enforcement training at all? Nope, none. Okay. And, well, do you think that you could accept an instruction from the judge that if you were selected as a juror in this case, you could presume that Mr. Avery is innocent unless and until the state can prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Yes. All right. Do you accept that basic proposition in our law? Yes, I do. All right. And you feel comfortable that you can abide by that? Yes. All right. And I take it from your questionnaire that you don't have any opinions of Mr. Avery's guilt or innocence at all at this time? No. All right. So you feel that you can give both the state and Mr. Avery a fair shake in this trial? Yes, I believe I can. And that you would decide his guilt or innocence only on what the evidence is that is presented during the course of the trial? Yes. All right. Is there any concern in your mind that if, you thought and you listened to all the evidence, you say, geez, I just don't think the state convinced me? Do you think you could be comfortable rendering a verdict of not guilty? Yes. All right. And do you think that would cause any concern or any problems with perhaps talking to your son, who's a law enforcement officer? Do you think that might hinder your relationship at all? No. All right. Attorney Fallon, I'll pass the juror. The court, Mr. Buting, Attorney Buting. Thank you. Voir dire examination by Attorney Buting. Good morning. Good morning. My name's Jerome Buting, and this is Attorney Dean Strang, and we represent Stephen Avery, okay? I'd like to pick up on some things that Mr. Fallon spoke about, but also a few other things. But let me first ask, your volunteer work that you do with the sheriff, can you tell me why you decided to do that? I wanted something to do. Okay, but there's lots of things you can volunteer for. Why that particular? I kind of wanted to see what they did. Okay, but why? I mean, I was curious. Do you have a particular interest in law enforcement, though? No. I mean, you could volunteer for, Habitat for Humanity or I don't have to do that much walking. Okay, was it your son's involvement with the department? Maybe that piqued your interest a little bit? Yeah, that was a little bit, too. Have you ever wanted to be in law enforcement? Thought, be kind of interesting to do? No, not really. How did the opportunity arise for you to do this? I heard that you could volunteer. And so who did you meet and what did you do? Peggy Holmes. I met her and talked to her and she signed me up. They did a background check on me and I got in. Okay, and you actually have a squad car that you drive around? Yeah, it says volunteer on the side. Okay, and you work with another gentleman? Yes, or woman? Sometimes, yes. And your son what is his rank or what? He's a sergeant. He's a sergeant? Yes. Same last name? Yes. Has he had any involvement in the Stephen Avery case? Yeah, he's standing outside the door. Okay, so he's had duties here in the courthouse, right? Yes. Did you ever talk to him about this at all? No. Ever talk to him about the Avery case? No, but he had to take training or something for some kind of gizmo they've used. Other than that, no. Stun belt? Yeah. Okay, so he talked to you about the training he had to do for that? Yeah, he mentioned it. That was about it, because I asked him why he had to go to school. Do you think the police officers would come into court and lie? Yeah. Under oath? Yeah. Why? Because they can get away with it. How do they get away with it? Some judges believe them. Okay. And juries as well? Yeah. Do you think that they have any more inclination or likelihood of lying than any other witness? No. Would you think that they feel like they can get away with it more easily than, say, any other witness? It depends on the situation. You think sometimes they're good at lying under oath? Yeah. Better than the average person? No. So why do you think they're good? They get away with it. Have you ever heard of that happening? Yeah. When or where? When I went to court? Okay. And you went to court on an OWI case? Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened there? Yeah, they arrested me. I had one beer. I wasn't drunk. But the reason I got into it with them is I always keep $3 over my sun visor. And they took it. And I knew if I brought it up in court that they would, laugh it off and think I was pulling something. But I never said boo. The officer brought it up that I said that he robbed me. Okay. And the judge believed him? And the judge believed him. Okay. So you were pulled over. Was this a first offense, OWI? Yes. How long ago was this? 10 years. And was this the sheriff's department? No, police. I don't think he's an officer anymore. Okay, do you know what department? No. Just city. Manitowoc, though? Yeah. Okay, and you're saying that when you were arrested, you had this officer took $3 cash that you had in, your car? And did you bring that up in court? No. But he brought it up and said that you claimed that he stole something from you? That he took the money? Yeah. Okay. And then did you respond to that in court and say no? He did? Yes, officer? Yes? I didn't say nothing because it ain't gonna do me no good. So you actually sat there and saw him lie under oath? Yes. Right in front of your face? Yes. And the judge believed him? Yeah. In your opinion, anyway. How did that make you feel? Mad, but there ain't nothing I can do about it. You think it happens to others, too? I don't know. That I couldn't tell you. Do you think it's possible that in this case, the Stephen Avery case, that officers would come into court and lie? I don't know. I'd have to hear them. Do you think officers could do, or deputies, or any law enforcement officer could do more than just lie under oath, but maybe even cross the line and falsify a report? Yeah. What about crossing the line and actually planting evidence or altering evidence in some way? Depends if he didn't like him. Depends what? Attorney Fallon. I'm sorry? The witness. Depends if he didn't like him. Question by Attorney Buting. Meaning the defendant? Yeah. So if an officer just really didn't like a particular defendant, you could see situations where they might actually go to the length of planting evidence or tampering it with evidence in a case? Maybe. Have you ever heard of that happening? No. Do you have any reason to believe that people in the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department would be capable of doing such a thing? I wouldn't think so. Do you have any reason to believe that they could not? In other words, because your son is there and you're volunteering there, do you think that it's just not possible that anybody in that department would do such a thing? It's possible. What if you came to the conclusion that happened in this case? That somebody in the very department that you volunteer for would do such a thing, such as tampering with evidence or planting evidence? How would that make you feel? Mad. Mad? Yes. Would that affect your verdict? Yes. How? I don't know. I would plead not guilty for him. Do you think that there would be any repercussions afterward for you? No, I don't think so. Do you think the people in that department that you volunteer for would be unhappy with you? I don't think so. If this involved, in this case, very high-ranking members of the department you work for, sergeants, lieutenants, things of that nature, do you think that they would be unhappy if you would return a not guilty verdict? I don't think so, no. Well, no, your son is a sergeant. What if you came to the conclusion that another sergeant, or even someone above him, had committed misconduct in this case? Would you be capable of rendering a not guilty verdict? Yes. Do you think your son would be unhappy with that? No. Why not? Because I'm being honest. Has he ever told you anything about the sheriff's department that would lead you to think that this kind of misconduct could be possible? No, he don't talk about his work. All right, can you tell me what you know about this case from publicity, media? They say he killed her and burned her up. That's about it. And what's your view about that? I hate to say it, but I ain't really got no view. Well, do you think it's wrong, but why do you say you hate to say it? I don't know. I just don't know what to tell you. Well, do you think that the media's portrayal of the things you hear in the media about Mr. Avery makes it look like he's probably guilty or probably innocent? I'm undecided with that because I didn't get to see that much, and then the judge told me not to watch, so I ain't seen nothing. Okay, did you see any press conferences in this case no. The sheriff? No. Prosecutor? No. I seen it way in the beginning, and that was about it. And can you remember any details about what you heard or saw? No, they just showed it. I think it was his farm and trailer house and the tape around the barrel, and that was about it. Okay, do you know the name Brendan Dassey? No. Or if I refer to him as Mr. Avery's nephew, do you recall any reports about him? Yeah. Not really. Well, I knew he was involved, but that was it. I really don't watch the news that much, I'm sorry to say. Okay, well, you say you knew that he was involved. Did you hear any news reports that he had made any kind of statements admitting that he was involved, or no? Did you ever hear any reports that he had later denied his involvement and recanting the confession, withdrawing the confession? No. Remember, you hadn't heard anything about that at all? No. Do you think that it's possible that somebody might confess to something that they didn't really do? Yes. Why? Under duress. Pressure from the police? Well, anybody. Okay. Family or something. Did you hear anything in the news reports about a blood vial? No. Have you heard anything at all about whether there might be any kind of tampering with evidence or planting of evidence? No. Do you remember Mr. Avery's statements when he was first arrested, in which he denied any involvement and claimed somebody was trying to frame him? Yeah, I think I did. What's your thought about that? Nothing. Do you think that, as you look at this case and what you've heard about this case, do you think Stephen Avery's being framed? I don't know. Think it's possible that he is? I don't know. I can't answer that. Okay. Couldn't even tell you. You don't know one way or the other, right? Right. You don't know whether he's guilty either? Correct. What do you know about his past? Can you tell me what you know about Mr. Avery? I seen it when he got out. Out of prison? Yes. Okay. So you knew that he was wrongfully convicted? Yes, and I was surprised to hear him on the next time on the news about him. About him suddenly being charged with something? Yes. Okay. Any doubt in your mind that he was wrongfully convicted? Spent all that time in prison? The first time? Yeah. Yeah, they were wrong. They were wrong? Yes. Okay, and how do you feel about that? I don't know how to say that. They were wrong, but I know it happens. You know it happens? Yes. Okay. How do you know it happens? They did it to him. Okay. Were you also aware of a lawsuit that he filed? Yeah. Against the county? Yes. Do you have any thoughts or opinions about that? I think he should get the money. Okay. Let me just very briefly go over a couple of other things here. Did you, in your OWI case, it sounds like you actually had a hearing? Yes. Did you go to trial? Yes. Did you have a lawyer? Yes. Did you testify? No. You didn't take the witness stand? No, I didn't think I did. I don't think I did. Okay. Did your lawyer or did you understand that you had a constitutional right not to testify? No. Is there some particular reason why you did not? Or I just don't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know until now. That you had a right not to? Yes. Did Attorney Fallon? Your Honor, I'm going to. Can we approach the bench? The court. Sure. Discussion off the record. Question by Attorney Buting. The questionnaire that you filled out, I think, had a question that told you about I don't recall the number right now, but I think it told you that the defendant has a right, a constitutional right not to testify if he and his lawyers so choose. If you say so, I don't remember. You don't remember? Sorry to say, no. I just filled it out to get out. Okay, well, just to quickly go over with you, the judge will instruct you that if Mr. Avery chooses not to testify under the, if it's our advice that he not testify, that you can't consider that against him in any way. In other words, some people might think if a defendant doesn't testify, he must have something to hide. Yes. Is that something you might be concerned about? No. So if Mr. Avery chooses not to testify, will that affect you in any way in thinking that he's still innocent? No. And if he does testify, will you be able to consider his testimony just the same as any other witness? Yes. Or will you think that he's more likely to lie just because he's the defendant in the case and he's trying to get off? Possible. Well, will you be able to consider his testimony in the same way as any other witness, though? Oh, yes. Okay. You watch CSI shows, I think, right? Yes. And it's your opinion that they're very realistic? Some of it, yes. Do you think that for instance, the evidence that they can find at crime scenes is all those tests, that's pretty realistic? Pretty much. Maybe that. Surprised at what they find, yeah. Okay. Maybe they can't do them as quickly as they show on TV, but the tests themselves, you'd tend to think they're realistic? Yes. And so, most crime scenes you'd expect there would be lots of evidence available. Yes. And if there wasn't, if there was a lack of physical evidence at a crime scene, is that something that would give you concern about whether or not there might be reasonable doubt? Yes. Let me ask this final question. Do you want to be on this jury, or do you not want to be on this jury? It's a toss-up, maybe. I don't want to be. You don't want to? You prefer not to be? Yeah. Why? I like what I do for the sheriff's department. I hate to miss it. And you really think that you'd be able to sit back there in that jury room and not be in some way biased against Mr. Avery, just because you work so closely with the sheriff's department? No. All right, thank you. The court. All right, we'll have the clerk escort you from the courtroom at this time, Mr. Wardman, wherein the juror is escorted out. The court. Counsel, is there a motion from either party? Attorney Fallon. None from the state? Attorney Buting. No, Your Honor. The court. All right, Mr. Wardman will be considered in.